What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about viral makeup that you hate. So I had polled you all over on my community tab a few weeks ago and asked what are the viral, most hyped up products that just didn't live up to your expectations. And I got over 500 responses. Last week I talked about your most hated drugstore products, and today we're going to be doing the high-end version. I got so many requests for this, and I think it's because if you buy a drugstore product and it fails, it's not as big a deal as if you're spending $40, $50, $60 on a high-end product only to have it be terrible. So I'm going to be doing a full face of your top most hated viral high-end products, and I'll also be reading your responses as well so we can find out what it is about these products that you didn't like. So if that sounds good to you, let's go ahead and jump right in and get started. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and start with primer. There were several that you really did not like, but your number one pick by far was the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter, which I kind of find interesting because the top pick for primer in my drugstore version of this video was the e.l.f. dupe for this, their Halo Glow primer. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but I'd love to hear what you had to say about the high-end version. So let's check it out. One person said, the Charlotte Tilbury Flawless Filter, it's so pasty and heavy feeling. e.l.f. really perfected the idea. So this person actually liked the e.l.f. version better. Charlotte Tilbury base products, including her cream and flawless filter, broke me out within hours. Wow. This one says Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter, struggling to date to finish it off and get rid of it, FFS. Oh man. And then this one said the Charlotte Tilbury Flawless Filter, way too sparkly, shimmery, and way too expensive for what it is. And then they were also talking about the e.l.f. contour ones and ones that they liked better. So yeah, I mean, it is a glowy primer. That's kind of its purpose. I don't find it to be thick or have a weird texture. I actually like the texture of it, and you know, these responses didn't say what kind of skin type they had, so it's possible that maybe oily skin doesn't like it as much. On my dry skin, I think this feels really nice. It's creamy. It almost feels like a moisturizer, and it's really nice and hydrating. So I happen to enjoy this product. It doesn't really offer much in the way of coverage, maybe just a teeny tiny bit, but it just gives a really beautiful glow to the skin. I do really like this, but if you don't want to use it all over your face, it can also be used just as a highlighter, just kind of pat it on top of makeup, and you can do that as well. Next, when it comes to high-end foundations, there were three that I feel like were right near the top. The first one was the House Labs foundation. A lot of you really don't like that one. The IT Cosmetics CC Cream, which definitely had a viral moment, not recently, but years ago, it was for sure a viral product. But the one foundation that had the most responses was the Makeup by Mario Surreal Skin. And I have to agree with some of what you guys were saying about this one. So let's see. The first person said Makeup by Mario foundation. It's a very polarizing product. I still try it once in a while just to reassure myself that it is way too glowy, shimmery, etc. I'll take dewy, but that's next level. Someone actually then responded to them and said, I feel like it was totally hit or miss. My faves right now are House Labs and Maybelline 24 Hour Skin. My skin isn't oily, so I can handle dewy, but it was almost Twilight Vampire sparkly. I prefer eyeshadow to sparkle, but not my entire face. Another person said the Makeup by Mario Surreal Skin foundation, I returned it after wearing it only once. It broke up around my nose so bad after only a couple of hours. So I can't speak to this breaking up on my face. I don't really remember it doing that, but what I don't like about this is the glitter. I feel like there are little tiny glitter particles in this formula. It's something that I don't know if everybody really noticed, especially when people were doing reviews of this product, because indoors it actually looks really nice. I didn't notice that it had glitter in it until after I went outside in the sunlight. And I was like, whoa, I really don't like the finish of this. It looked like it just highlighted all of my texture. It was just way too much of the glow. But when you're in indoor lighting, it really doesn't look bad. So that's kind of my theory on why everybody was giving this such a good review. That, and I guess some people just like a glow, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I just find like the older I get and the more textured my skin gets, I try to avoid too much glow if I can help it. Yeah, like right now as I'm applying this, even though I have the Charlotte Tilbury underneath as well, so my skin is going to be really, really glowy today. But looking at it in like my studio lighting, it looks a little glowy, but it doesn't look that bad, wait till I go outside. It's gonna be insane. That being said, I do love the texture of this foundation. I think it just sits really nicely on the skin. It's very thin and lightweight, and it's not thick or mask-like. It kind of just sinks right in and looks like skin, which I love. If it didn't have all the shimmer, it would be perfect. And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned, but this is the shade 2N. Let me just show you guys up close what this looks like. Unfortunately, it's not really fair because I have the Hollywood Flawless filter on underneath, so I think it's gonna look more glowy than it normally would. But I definitely noticed an increase in the glow since I applied this, so it's very, very shiny. All right, guys, let's move on to concealer. This was no contest. Almost every single person mentioned this specific concealer, and that is Tarte Shape Tape. This definitely went viral and everybody was talking about it, but a lot of you really hated this product. So let's see what you had to say. First one says, definitely Tarte Shape Tape. As soon as I applied it, I looked 10 years older and never understood the hype. Tarte Shape Tape, my under eyes were so dry, they looked like a road map. This one just said Tarte Shape Tape, yuck. Next it says Tarte Shape Tape Concealer, so dry. I looked much older when I wore it. And that's definitely a common theme in all of these responses. This person said Tarte Shape Tape is dry as the Sahara and ages me 20 years. I feel like this is another very polarizing product. So many people just seem to love it and rave about it. And then other people are just like, no way. And it's a complexion product. So I think it heavily depends on a few different things, your age, your skin type, and texture. I think those are probably the most important things. Something heavy like this, if you're younger and you don't have wrinkles or texture under your eyes, it's gonna look a lot better on you than somebody who is older and has, you know, a bunch of stuff going on. Same thing with, I think, dry versus oily skin. I think those of us who are a little bit more dry can find this formula to be not the most moisturizing. So what I'm gonna do is just put it a little bit on the outer edge and just kind of blend it back this way. And I find that this really helps to not add too much product. And when I do it this way, even the thickest formulas can look okay under my eyes if I just don't put a lot right here where my wrinkles are. So I'm just gonna blend this in with a sponge. I think a sponge helps too, you know, because it kind of picks up a little bit of the excess product and makes it go on a little more seamlessly. I'm just gonna put a little on the inner corner too, because I usually have darkness in there. All right, so I definitely see a huge difference between the one with the Shape Tape and the eye without. It just looks a lot brighter. And if I zoom you guys in, hold on one second, it really doesn't look bad under my eyes at all. And that's because I just put the littlest amount, 1 dot here and 1 dot here, and then just blended a little bit towards the middle, but I really don't have a lot of product going on. And because this is really full coverage, I think you can get away with not using too much as long as you don't have a lot of darkness or things that you want to hide under your eyes. So this is pretty much the only way I can get this product to work on me, but I think it does do a pretty good job if I just use it very sparingly. All right, I'm just doing the other eye really quick and then we'll move on to powder. And actually we didn't have powder in the last version of this video. Nobody really mentioned a drugstore powder they hated, but man, you guys hate this one particular powder. So that is the Laura Mercier Original Setting Powder. This one also, I mean, huge viral product, not as much recently, but in years past, every single YouTuber was using this stuff. You just couldn't get away from it. A few of you actually mentioned the Hourglass powders too, feeling like they don't really do a whole lot, but this one by far got the most responses. So let's see what you had to say. The first one says, Laura Mercier Setting Powder, too heavy, settles in lines, and looks cakey. The next person said, Laura Mercier Loose Translucent Powder, awful. No words to describe how bad it looked under my eyes and all over the face. Another one said, Laura Mercier OG Loose Setting Powder aged me by about 10 years. It was dry and showed texture I didn't even know was there. Horrible for me. The Laura Mercier Translucent Setting Powder, I looked like the Crypt Keeper, way too drying. And this last one says Laura Mercier Setting Powder is so chalky. This is actually a product I have never tried before. I went out and bought this little mini size just for this video because I wanted to see if what all of you were saying was true. And having dry skin, I haven't tried a ton of of powders. I try to actually avoid them if I can. I don't normally have issues like with my concealer creasing unless I use something that's really, really emollient. So I just am not usually using setting powder, but there are a few now that I really like. I love the one from Moira, and Huda Beauty has really good powders that are nice and smooth under the eyes. So I'm curious to see how this cult classic performs. I did just get the translucent shade. Let's see. I mean, you guys saw how the Tarte concealer looked under my eyes, so we'll see if this changes things. I'm just gonna pat a little bit. By the way, this is my Doll 10 Jen Phelps brush collection. This is the powder brush. Shameless plug, it is still available on their website if anybody is interested. It's a 5-piece brush collection, eye and face brushes for $49, but you can also use a 15% off code, which I'll link down below. All right, so let's zoom in again and see what this looks like. All right, so I feel like my under eye area looks really good, actually. It feels nice and smooth. This is the side with just the Tarte Shape Tape, and then this is with the Laura Mercier. I mean, I guess we'll kind of have to let it settle and see what it looks like after a little while, but right now I think it looks fine. And we'll do my forehead. I mean, my forehead is very, very shiny right now from the foundation, so let's just dust a little bit. Again, I'm going in pretty sparingly, so put a little on my nose and chin as well. This is supposed to be a very finely milled powder and one that is very lightweight, and it's just supposed to blur your pores. Again, I had never tried it before, but it definitely took down a lot of the glow that I had going on. I don't feel like it aged my skin in any way, but again, I don't know if it's something that happens right away or if we have to wait. So I guess I'll just keep you guys updated and we'll take another look at the end of the video. Moving on, there was only one high-end brow product that you all really didn't seem to like, and that was the Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Freeze. So this is like a brow gel that comes in a pot. It's a clear gel. It almost kind of reminds me of the texture of hair gel. So let's see what you guys had to say. The first person said, ABH Brow Freeze would always ball up in my eyebrows. The next one says, ABH Brow Freeze, it looks great at first, but doesn't set down. Eyebrows fall within minutes, and I've tried before applying skincare. It's still a fail. So I've actually been using this for a while. e.l.f. makes a dupe of it as well. I think the e.l.f. one is also pretty decent, but I agree with the person who said it makes your brows look really good at first, but then it never sets down and it kind of makes them droop after a while. I find that it doesn't have the best hold, even though it's called Brow Freeze. I would say my biggest advice with this is just, again, to use it very sparingly. The more you use, the more goopy it's gonna look and the less likely it's gonna be to dry down. It's definitely not one of those brow products that's gonna make your brows feel like stiff and crunchy. It doesn't dry down in that way. But I find that I can get pretty good hold out of it if I just sort of press my brows into my skin. Like if I just kind of, once I'm done combing them through, if I just press them with my finger like that, they tend to stay put a lot better. So that's usually what I do when I'm done. And then I fill them in afterwards. And I did that in the last video as well. I got a couple of comments saying that I was doing my brows wrong because I applied the gel first and I filled them in second. And just quickly, I have to address that because it bothers me when people tell other people, and I've seen this in other YouTubers' comment sections as well, it bothers me when people say, you're doing this wrong. I don't think that there's any rules to makeup, and for years and years and years, I always did my brows, like fill them in first and then apply brow gel as a final step. To be quite honest, people used to make fun of my brows. When they would come to my channel, they would be like leaving all sorts of nasty comments saying that I didn't know how to do my brows, and admittedly, they didn't look the best. But ever since I've been doing it this reverse way, I actually have people coming on now and saying like, wow, your brows look great. I haven't watched you in a while. What are you doing that's different? I'd love to hear, you know, your method. And this is basically it. I comb my brows up first, I let them set, and then I fill them in with a brow pen. I use the NYX Lift and Snatch. And I just think in general, makeup is for experimentation and thinking outside of the box. And you don't have to do your makeup exactly like everybody else. And sometimes if you cater it to your own unique features, you might figure out a better way like I did with my brows. I'm actually just gonna start filling them in while I talk. And not to get off on a long tangent about brows, but one of the things that I noticed is that my brow hairs grow sideways and downward. They don't grow up like most people's. So whenever I would fill in my brows first and then use brow gel afterwards, I found that I was filling them in while they were pointed sideways, and then I'd go to brush them up, and all of a sudden I would have a bunch more gaps that I just exposed, and I'd have to go back in and fill them in more, and it just started to get really messy and it didn't look clean. So then I thought, why don't I just get my brows in place first? And then I can see exactly where I need to fill them in, and I don't have to overfill them and make them look unnatural, which is how I was doing it before. So see, now that my brow is exactly where I want it, I can just take this pen and just fill in little gaps here and there, and it just gives such a natural result. And I'm honestly never going back to filling them in first. It just doesn't make sense for me and my brows. It could for other people, but again, I think that's just where you need to think outside of the box sometimes and really like focus on what your problem is that you're trying to solve, and then try to work toward a solution rather than just copying what everybody else on YouTube is doing, because makeup is not one size fits all. And I think that's so important, and it just really needs to be said. So when people tell me I'm doing my brows wrong, it's like, no, I'm doing my brows the way I want to do them, and that's it. All right, so let's move on to eyeshadow. And I felt like eyeshadow is a category that was all over the place. I got a lot of answers for just one thing, like somebody mentioned Natasha Denona, somebody mentioned Patrick Ta, but the one that had, I would say, the most responses, which were only a couple, was Huda Beauty. So I wanted to quickly read those. The first one said, Huda Beauty eyeshadows only because the ones I tried had glitter reflex that ended up on my face at the end of the day after the base color wears away, even with eye primer. And another person just got very specific. They said Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette. No matter what look I did, it looked so washed out. The shimmers just disappeared halfway through the day. I haven't bought a Huda palette since. So that was interesting to me because I love Huda's formula. I'm a huge fan of it. And the main complaint, I guess, with both of these is that they fade throughout the day. It's not really something that I've noticed using it, but then again, I always use glitter primer for just about every shimmer shade, and that will lock literally any formula in place. If you use glitter primer, I don't care if it's like the type of formula that wears away after an hour, it's going to last if you use this. So I guess it's kind of hard for me to say if it would or it wouldn't last if I'm not using this, because I've been using this for so long, I don't even remember. But if you have issues like that, I highly recommend this. It's from NYX and it's only a couple of dollars. You can get it on Amazon and at Ulta. So it's 100% worth getting, and you only need the tiniest little bit. I've had this tube for months and it still feels completely full. So the palette that I decided to use today is my absolute favorite Huda palette, the Naughty Nudes. This has been out for quite a while now, but I still love it. I wear this one all the time. I'm just gonna quickly prep my eyelids with the MAC Paint Pot in Painterly. It feels so 2016, doesn't it? Everybody was using Painterly back then, but it is a seriously good product to prep your eyes with. So I feel like this is definitely a viral product that was worth the hype. Next, I'm just gonna set it with this shade right here, Filthy, and I'm gonna use just a big fluffy brush. This is the BK Beauty 201. I really love this pale pink shade. It actually shows up a little bit deeper on the skin than it does in the pan, which is kind of weird, but I like it. I think it's just a nice brightening shade. Next, I'm gonna pick up this shade Rough, which is this one right here for my crease. And I'm applying this with the Angie Hot and Flashy A504 brush from BK Beauty. So I'm just gonna draw my crease and then I'll go back and blend it out. I'm just gonna blend it with my eyeshadow brush from my Jen Phelps collection. And I love this brush because it's the perfect balance between something fluffy and something a little more firm. And I feel like it just is such a good blender. So I like that this one has a little bit more firmness and just really gets rid of those harsh edges. And it's also not too big, so it's good for hooded eyes. All right, then for the outer corner, I'm gonna pick up the shade Untamed right here. This is actually a very pigmented color, so I'm just going in super sparingly with it and just applying it to the outer corner with that A504 brush from the Angie Hot and Flashy collection. Then I'm going to take my Jen Phelps brush again and just use it to blend out the edge. I love this palette so much. It just gives you like the most beautiful rosy tone looks. It's super underrated. I feel like a lot of people talked about it when it first came out and now nobody really mentions it anymore, but it's probably my favorite palette that she's ever done. Although I am looking forward to her Pretty Grunge palette that's supposed to be coming out in a few weeks. That one also looks amazing. All right, time for some NYX glitter primer. So when I said you only need a little bit, you really only need a little bit. Like I'm talking this much on your ring finger, just the tiniest little dot, that'll cover your eyelid. So I'm just gonna pat that with my ring finger just on the lid. You don't wanna go any higher than wherever you're gonna put the shimmer shade. And I think today I'm gonna use the shade Irresistible. This is one of my favorites. Such a gorgeous rosy tone metallic. So I'm just gonna apply this from the inner corner back toward the center of my lid. And I'm just gonna pick up a little bit of this shade right here, Please Me. And I'm just gonna add this kind of to the outer edge. I love adding this bronzy color in right where the matte in the outer corner meets the shimmer shade. It adds just a tiny little bit of warmth and it's such a beautiful shade. And I'm just repeating on the other side. I just added the NYX glitter primer. And now I'm going in with the shade Irresistible. Another thing that someone mentioned in their comment was that they got glitter all over their face, and the glitter primer will also help with that. It's not 100% foolproof, but it does minimize the fallout quite a bit. All right, eyes are looking good. I'm just gonna pop that crease color that I used underneath my eyes as well. Again, using the Angie 504 brush, which honestly, such a versatile brush. I use this one a lot. All right, guys, so eye look is done. I love this palette so much, and I'm gonna have to disagree with the comments on Huda Beauty's formula. I personally really like it. So let's move on to mascara, and there were a couple that definitely got mentioned quite a few times. Several people mentioned the Tower 28 mascara, saying that it was really clumpy. A few people said the Thrive mascara flaked all over on them, even though it's a tubing formula and it's not supposed to. But by far, the most responses were for the Too Faced Better Than Sex. This also was a very viral product several years ago, and then when L'Oreal came out with Lash Paradise, that went viral as a dupe for this. So I feel like a lot of people hold this up as one of the best mascaras like of the past decade. I personally don't agree, and you guys didn't either, so let's see what you had to say. The first one says, Better Than Sex mascara leaves residue throughout the day and I look like a panda. Better Than Sex mascara was a flaky hot mess on me. This one says, Better Than Sex mascara, it flakes and transfers. And I hate Better Than Sex mascara, it smears like crazy. This next one says, Too Faced Better Than Sex mascara flaked up and left black flecks all over my face. After 3 tubes of being in denial, I gave up. The internet made me want to love it so bad. Isn't that funny? I do the exact same thing. When I don't like something, but everybody else seems to, I just keep trying it repeatedly, hoping that I'm gonna change my mind because I just can't figure out why I don't like it and other people seem to love it. But that's just the way it is with these viral products. And sometimes too, you have to be wary of the fact that, you know, when influencers are talking about things, they could be getting paid to do so, or they could be getting incentivized, even just to stay on someone's PR list, even if they're not getting paid or under contract to talk about it. Or sometimes they're just loyal to a brand. I always like to say that I'm loyal to you guys, you know? Don't get me wrong, I love getting PR, but if I don't like something, I'm gonna tell you. And if that brand decides to stop sending me PR, then so be it. It is what it is. I'll just have to buy everything. And in my experience, not all brands get upset or, you know, take you off the PR list if you criticize something or if you're negative about a product. One that comes to mind is Milani. I remember giving a negative review of something once, and they actually reached out to me and they said, you know, thank you so much for your feedback. We'll definitely take it into consideration. And they said how grateful they were that I always show so much love to the brand and that I always talk about their products. So, you know, it was really such a nice response and it made me like them even more, honestly. So as far as this mascara goes, It's fine. It's okay. I don't think it gives me the biggest lashes in the world. It's very mediocre. It gives quite a bit of volume. It doesn't give me as much length as I'm normally looking for, and it does smudge and transfer all underneath my eyes. So I would agree with the comments about this one. I think it's definitely not worth the hype. All right, just a quick update on my face before we move on to blush. I'm starting to notice as I've been looking in the mirror that I think it's the powder, the Laura Mercier powder, has started to kind of settle into the fine lines on my forehead. It looks chalky. Like, you guys were right about it. When I initially put it on, it looked good, but I'm starting to see like my forehead wrinkles a little bit. It almost gives like this cracked appearance. Let me just zoom you guys in. All right, so I don't know how easy it's going to be for you guys to see, but it just doesn't look as smooth as it did before. It's making my makeup look kind of textured. On my cheek also, and again, I don't know if this is the foundation or the powder or a combination of the two. I feel like my chin looks really kind of makeup-y. I don't know, I'm not really loving how it looks right now. But anyway, let's move on to blush. There were a bunch that you also felt were not worth the hype, and there was one clear winner, which I'm going to talk about, but a few runners up were the Charlotte Tilbury Pinkgasm Wand that everybody talks about, the NARS Orgasm Blush. A lot of you felt like it was way too glittery, and the Rare Beauty Blush. A lot of people said that they felt like they were hard to use and that they lifted up their foundation. But the number one, by far, was the Dior Rosy Glow Blush. And this one went viral a lot more recently, like within the past year, mostly over on TikTok, but plenty of people here on YouTube were talking about it as well. So it's a hot pink blush. My biggest gripe about it is that it gets hard pan, and nobody really mentioned that in the responses. But if you look at mine, you can see where it's just kind of glazed over, and it really doesn't pick up very well on a brush. But let's see what all of you guys had to say. The first one says, both the Dior Rosy Glow Blush and the Charlotte Tilbury Beauty Light Wand in Pinkgasm were huge letdowns. The Dior blush is too light to show up much on my light, neutral, leaning, cool skin without a lot of building up, and it's just not a flattering color. The next one says, the Dior Rosy Glow Blush was the absolute worst waste of money I have spent yet on any product. Absolutely nothing special at all, and looks more peach on me than pink, and faded almost instantly, and I have drier skin. And just on a side note, I believe this is one of those pH adjusting formulas as well. So I think if it's turning peach on some people, it actually does on me as well. It doesn't look hot pink once I put it on. I think that's that pH adjusting factor. So it's one of those things that's not really going to look the same on everybody. The next one says, the iconic Dior pink blush. It barely showed up on my skin after building it up. It faded 2 hours later. Dior Rosy Glow, out of hundreds of blushes in my collection, not a superior formula. And this one says, Dior Rosy Glow Blush. I'm a huge fan of Dior, mostly. So you guys were definitely not loving this one. And I kind of agree with some of your comments. I don't think this is the be-all, end-all of like light hot pink blushes. There are a lot of alternatives, and I have talked about dupes and stuff on my channel, and ones that are not the pH adjusting formula, and ones that I think are a better formula that show up better on the skin. This one on me also, I feel like it shows up a little warm for some reason, and I always expect that my cheeks are gonna look very cool toned when I wear this, but for some reason they don't. And even though I have a really light skin tone, you've probably seen me build this up now 3 times. I'm gonna go back in with a 4th layer. It's just very, very sheer. And like I said, because it develops hard pan, it just hardly anything comes up on the brush. And I just think this is so expensive for what it is. There are so many cheaper blushes that I like a lot more and that I wear a lot more often. So it's okay, but I just don't think it's worthy of all of the hype that it got. Then moving on to lips, there were also a couple that you guys were sort of torn between. First was Clinique's Black Honey. A lot of you said that it was a pretty color, but that it dried out your lips. I got like 4 or 5 different comments saying the exact same thing. Also, the Fenty Gloss Bomb A lot of you felt like it's thick and sticky and just didn't really get the hype around it. The Tower 28 lip gloss, I got a comment about that. But again, by far, the biggest offender was the Tarte Maracuja Juicy Lips. So let's see what you guys had to say. It kind of makes me sad because I love these. One comment said, Tarte Maracuja Juicy Lips, the combination of the round applicator and thick consistency of the product itself makes it hard to apply without going outside of the lips. Messy, melty, and gets all over the packaging too. Another person said, I don't love the Tarte Maracuja Juicy Lips. They just feel too goopy and slippy for me. This one said, Tarte Shape Tape was awful. I also dislike Tarte Juicy Lips because I bought 5 initially and every single one stopped clicking up after a few uses. I won't buy again unless they change the packaging. So that's interesting because I've had so many of these and the packaging has never stopped working for me. I wonder if they went through a time when there was like something defective with them, but I love these. This is actually the honeysuckle shade. It looks really dark in the tube, but when you put it on, it's very sheer. It's kind of like a Clinique Black Honey actually, and that really melty texture is what I love about these. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that I have very dry lips. And so the thickness of this, I feel like it kind of like fills in all of the lip lines that make my lips look even drier. And it just gives them like a smoother appearance. And also because it's kind of thick, it stays put a little bit longer than other lip balms and glosses. I mean, I still wouldn't say it's a super long-lasting product by any means, but I just tend to feel it on my lips like a little bit longer, and the hydration lasts longer even after it's worn away. I still feel like my lips are a little hydrated. Plus, I love the coconut scent, and I know that's not going to be for everybody, but I just love how they smell like the beach. They're actually similar to the Maybelline Lifter Glosses, which was your #1 pick in my drugstore video. And I love those too. So anyway, guys, this was so much fun. I loved putting these videos together and I hope you all enjoyed them too. And I'll be sure to pin a comment down below and let you know how everything wore. I mean, the Huda eyeshadow and the Tarte Maracuja Juicy Lips and also the Hollywood Flawless Filter are all kind of favorites of mine. So I didn't agree with those 3, but I feel like the rest I definitely did agree with. So I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down in the comments below as always. And if you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll consider hitting the subscribe button. If you have some extra time and you'd like to watch more of my videos, I'll go ahead and just put one right up here for you to check out next. And I want to thank you all so much for taking time out of your day to spend it here and watch this video. I really, truly appreciate it. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all in my next one. Take care, guys. Bye.